Hi guys, Ramsey here. Welcome back to another video. Today, we are going to do the first installment in a series that I am going to call This Is Not a Top 10. And I'm going to do these for a lot of different things like individual notes. But today it's a special episode. It's going to be fragrances that I hate. So this is not a top 10 video. I just grabbed some fragrances from my collection that I actually bought bottles of, for the most part, that I actually hate. And some of them were blind buys. This video is a little complex when you judge it. Some of these are going to take you back because you're going to say, that's a great fragrance. And you may be right because some of these are the current formulation. So they're not the vintage. And I can completely understand somebody coming back and saying, you know, you're not giving the fragrance a fair shake. Some of them I actually plan on buying the vintage fragrances, and I plan on doing a comparison between the modern version and the vintage version. Before we get started, let's do Scent of the Day, because today it's a special one, and it's The Moon by Frederick Malle. And this is a 10 ml decant I got from my good friend from Base Notes, Mood de Cire. Check him out on there. He's very trustworthy and has great stuff, great prices. But this is a very interesting fragrance because it has a couple fruity type notes in the top. It has raspberry and it has the note of lychee, or lychee, I don't know how you pronounce it. But it reminded me, it has oud. It's from the Desert Gem collection, so it has oud. It has this sour oud twang you get from the beginning. Initially, I thought I didn't get much oud, but as I'm kind of realizing how the fragrance was constructed, this is the first time that I'm giving it a full wear. I think there definitely is oud there, but it's not the animalic type. It's not like the night. There's only one other fragrance that has that lychee note, and that I have in my collection, and that's called Zonka. This was composed by Bertrand Duchaufour, the master of the incense note. But this is a vintage bottle. And the moon reminds me a little bit of Zonka. I guess, you know, it's very hard to have a note like lychee run through the fragrance and not remind you. You know, the moon, which this is a 9-hour dry down. I went to play pool with my friends, and the base is so tenacious. I like this fragrance because I like how the fruitiness of the raspberry accord was built, and with that sour oud, the base is probably full of synthetic molecules, but I actually really like the way it was composed. It really does it for me. This and Promise are two that I might consider buying a full bottle. I don't want to pay full retail, but, you know, when you're buying the Desert Gem collections, it's hard to get a deal. But those are the two that really jumped out to me. The Night and the Dawn. The Dawn was the most disappointing. But anyways, on to the video at hand. So, these are fragrances I hate. Some of them are going to shock you, but I will explain myself. So the first is a all-time classic, and I actually have the vintage version of this, so I have a comparison. I have a base, and it's a fragrance called Caron Pour Un Homme. This is a classic masculine. You know, I love classic masculine fragrances. This is basically vanilla and lavender, and this is one of the best lavender scents out there. Well, actually, I take that back. This is one of the best lavender scents out there. This is the same fragrance, but in the vintage formula. This is so smooth, and you can see it's green. You know, lavender, most people think it's purple. It's not. It's green when it comes out, like when it's a natural lavender. And this feels natural. It feels comforting, enveloping. You know, it even feels a little soft, even though it's masculine. You know, it feels soft to the nose. This feels screechy. It feels like I almost recoil when I spray it. I almost washed this off. There's only one fragrance I've ever washed off in my life, and I will show it to you at the very end of the video if you can stick around that long. This almost became a scrubber. So this is where this video is going to have a caveat. Again, fantastic fragrance, one of the best lavenders out there. If you can find this bottle, look at the bottle. If you can find this bottle, get it. You know, this is an old fragrance. It came out in 1934. So it's gone through a lot of reformulations from the house of Caron. but this modern formula is absolute trash, in my opinion. They've completely ruined this fragrance, trying to save money probably. And you can kind of see the difference in the color. So anyways, this is one that I came across in testing and wanted to kind of share my experience with you guys. That's the number 1 fragrance in my collection. I have a full bottle of that I hate. Number 2 is a Molinard fragrance, and it's called Cuir. And again, these are my opinions. It's my channel. I'm gonna shoot straight with you, but some of these probably will shock you. I've heard people say good things about this fragrance. I hate this fragrance. Despise it. I actually have never given it a full wear because every time I test it, it just revolts me. It is supposed to be a leather. That's what cuir means. It's cuir in French is leather. And but they've done something with this that I really did not like. They've added this oud note in the base, and it's almost and it's not anything close to a real oud. I actually sprayed it because I couldn't remember if it was this or their patchouli that I didn't like, and I actually do not like their patchouli either. It's very scratchy as well. I almost included that, but I figured one beating of this brand was enough. It's you know, the oud is like this burnt rubber accord. It feels melted. It's very harsh on the nose, and that's what you'll find with a lot of these. They're not pleasing to the nose at all. They, you know, they just smell, they don't smell good, you know, and even who cares if they have beast mode performance if they smell like ass, you know? And this fragrance falls into that category for me. These are probably bottles I would sell. I should sell. It's not something I'm going to keep wearing and try to love because I don't like this at all. This is a big loser for me. Apparently, these are getting harder to find, so maybe I'll just hang on to it till the price goes way up and double or triple my money. But Cuir by Molinard is number 2. Number 3 is a similar situation. It's a niche house. And it's not a cheap fragrance. It's Nicolai Parfumers Patchouli Intense. And this was a blind buy. I was a little excited to try some of her stuff because, you know, she's a relative of a Guerlain and all this stuff. And to be honest with you, Patchouli Intense, I came across the same issue that I ran into with Cuir and that I ran into with this formulation of Caron Pour Un Homme. It is so screechy. It feels like the geranium is amped up to levels that's just so heavy that it gives off this minty, screechy, you know, there is lavender in this as well. And I don't get, if there's patchouli, there obviously has to be patchouli. It's patchouli intense, and there's patchouli in the note breakdown. But whenever I wore this, I got a lot of what felt like heavy, screechy geranium and lavender, those 2 notes. If you could imagine just an overdose of those, but not done very well. You know, this is very harsh on the nose. This is another one that I almost have no interest in wearing. I mean, thank God I only got a 30 ml bottle. But this is one that I also just have basically no interest in getting to know this very much because I can't stand it. I think it smells completely awful. And this is what happens when you blind buy fragrances. There are hits and there are misses, and Patchouli Intense is a big miss for me. But again, maybe I'll sell it one day if I can get around to just, you know, throwing them up online or something, but I'm just too lazy right now. Okay, next I'm going to show you a fragrance that I don't think is done very well from a house I actually really like. I'll do a family portrait on this house if you guys are interested. It's the house of Jacques Bogart. I love this house because it's fantastic value for money. This is the only Jacques Bogart I wish I didn't buy, and it's called Silver Scent Pure. And this is supposed to be a summer fragrance, obviously, as you can tell from the white bottle. Jacques Bogart, if you're not familiar with them, they do beast mode fragrances. I showed off their One Man Show Oud edition as a good replacement for leather oud if you can't, spend the money and you want something cheap. It's a very interesting take on oud. They have a lot of fragrances I'll showcase when I do their family portrait that is fantastic value for money. Just out of this world. And this, unfortunately, is not one of them to me. It is supposed to be like a narrowly minty, grapefruit, lavender, musk type fragrance. Narrowly, historically, is a very expensive note in perfumery to use properly, you could say. And this is very synthetic. Jacques Bogart makes synthetic fragrances. That's how they can sell them for so cheap. But to my nose, if you're going to want this scent profile, I would much rather prefer to spend the extra $20 and go for something like this. This is Dunhill Icon, and I think I got this 100 ml bottle for 45 or 50 bucks or something like that. And I think I got this bottle for 20 or 18, and this is also 100 ml. So double the price, but you're not talking, $100 to $200. You're talking 20 to 40 bucks approximately, and this is far superior. This is Carlos Benaim. Again, we talked about him on previous videos. He did Polo Green, and he also did Dawn, and he did music for a while, and Dunhill Icon. And this is a fantastic narrowly scent. Very clean, very summery. I love this fragrance. It gives off a little bit of a grape soda vibe when you first spray it. This is actually the reason I never bought Terre de Hermes. I don't own that fragrance because of this, and also Roja's Oligarch. But anyways, this is Dunhill Icon. I love this fragrance. This is the one I don't like, but I just wanted to show you guys an example of a fragrance done well in this style. This is one of the few misses from the house of Jacques Bogart for yours truly. Okay, next. Next is a vintage fragrance. And again, this is a situation where I have the current formulation, so I would love to try a vintage bottle and compare, but I don't like this. It's Cacharel Pour Un Homme. And this is a spicy, nutmeg, heavy fragrance. It has the note of carnation in the mid, which I usually love. It has fir, vetiver, cedar, oak moss in the base. I mean, this is my kind of fragrance if you read the notes. But I don't like what they've done with the spicy nutmeg accord. Maybe it was reformulated to save money. They cheapened out on the ingredients a bit. Cacharel is a house I'm not very familiar with. You don't hear very many of their fragrances, making lists of people, things that people love. You don't hear people talking about them, hyping them up. They are a very under the radar house, and they had this hit. This came out in, apparently it was a hit from 1981, which was a fantastic year for perfumery, by the way. Some of my all-time favorite fragrances came out in 1981. But this is one that I just do not like in the modern formulation. Just like some more coming up, I'm going to get a vintage bottle if I can find one for a good price, and I will do a comparison video for you guys if you would like. But this modern formulation was a real letdown for me. Okay, next is a house that I blind bought this based on the hype years ago. And I instantly never bought anything else from the house full. I never bought any other full bottles from this house, let's put it that way. And it's the house of Mancera. And if you know what's in this. It is Cedrat Boise. I am an Aventus lover. I will tell you that right now. A lot of people who claim to be fragrance aficionados do not like Aventus, but I do. Aventus has always worked for me, and I love it and enjoy it and all that stuff. This was supposed to be their take on Aventus, but it's blended in maybe the worst way you could blend a fragrance. It's boring, it's screechy, it's just because it's beast mode and unapologetic on the projection, just because people can smell you from a mile away does not make this a good fragrance. And this was a blind buy, and it's the only Mancera bottle I own in my collection. I also do not have any of his sister house Montal. I don't own a single Montal. As soon as I learned they were sister houses years ago, and I learned my lesson here, I never bought a Montal. So Cedrat Boise, some people will say it's versatile. It works great here and there and, you know, whatever. But to me, this is just a very boring... I'd much rather just wear a Ventus, let's put it that way. Again, now they do this, they don't do these twist caps anymore. They do this magnetic cap, so maybe since I have a vintage bottle, someone will pay me 3 times the price and I can get out of this horrible investment. Okay, next is another Aventus take, and it's another niche house that way overcharges for what they offer, and this is the Scent of Peace by Bond Number 9. The only cool thing about this fragrance is the bow tie. Literally, this is the coolest thing about this fragrance. You're looking at it right now. The fragrance itself, utterly boring. I don't know if it's as bad as the Mancera. It's probably not. It's a little fresher take on Aventus with juniper and stuff like that. But to me, it's just, you know, I don't know why I bought this. It's there is a fragrance from the house of Bond Number 9 that I like, called New York Oud. I think they discontinued it. But outside of that, I don't think I've smelled anything from the house that's impressed me. I also own Signature, which is their pure parfum, but it's just one of the weirdest musk fragrances you'll ever smell. Very, very synthetic. So anyways, 100 ml bottle that I'll probably never use. Something I should probably sell, since if I want this scent profile, I'd much rather just wear Aventus. This is, you could call it like a designer take on Aventus, but who needs a designer take on Aventus? So another full bottle fragrance I hate, the Scent of Peace for him. And then next on the list is one of the biggest disappointments when I finally got my nose on it within the last year or so, because it was hyped so much in the community. You know, you see top 10 videos and this is in there, and you know, if you love this fragrance, I'm sorry, but it is what it is. I don't have a full bottle, and thank God for that. This is Initio Parfums Oud for Greatness. I've heard people say some outlandish things about this fragrance. Oh, the best oud in the game, the you know, the best value for money oud. This is one of the most synthetically disgusting fragrances. When I smelled this, actually, the very first time I smelled it, I just went. Because it reminded me of a fragrance I bought, you know, within the last couple years, actually, from Lattafa, which is a clone house, called Amir Al Oud Intense Oud. This reminds me of a mix between Oud for Greatness and By the Fireplace. And actually, the smell... the aroma chemicals are almost identical, but I think the $20 Lattafa, which you'll never hear me talk about clone brands for the most part, does it better than the $250 Initio Oud for Greatness. The prices on this brand are bonkers. They're insane. They're, you know, they're completely out of their minds to charge what they charge for this. It is so synthetic. They say, you know, I haven't heard them say there's real oud in here, so maybe there's not. Maybe it is all synthetic. You know, if they say there's real oud, there is probably the tiniest drop of real oud. It feels so aromachemistically. It's not blended very well. It's not a very good fragrance at all. I mean, the first thing when I sprayed this on, the very first thing that I thought was Lattafa, which is a Middle Eastern, you know, clone brand house, who actually, I think, does a better job on... they've done a better job on this fragrance than I think Initio did on Oud for Greatness. And again, I'm just shooting straight from you guys. Anyone who puts this in a top 10 must-own winter, summer, blah, blah list is just full of it. So if you want this scent profile, go hunt this down. You know, spend $20 instead of $280, and you'll actually probably get a better fragrance. That's about as damning as a review can be. Okay, next is a designer, and I could have included a couple other designers that I mistakenly sprung for over the years, but this is Boss The Scent Intense. I love Hugo Boss fragrances like Number One. And I love Hugo Boss Sport, which is one of my favorite sport fragrances of all time. So Hugo Boss has some fragrances that I actually really, really like, but this is not one of them. They say this is a leather fragrance. This is not a leather fragrance. This is just one of the most boring designer synthetic. They're using the same gallons of IFF or Givaudan chemicals that every other designer house is using, and blending it together in a bathtub and putting it in this bottle, and it smells just like normal teenage boy at the mall. It's just so boring. They say there's a Maninka note in here that makes it stand out. I don't know. I don't get any Maninka. I just get this aroma chemical crap that every single designer sells. They sell these for like 60 or 80 or $100 or something. This is like a $5 fragrance to me. Just complete crap. Will never wear this unless I use all 500 bottles in my collection and never buy any more. And this is all I have left. I would probably still go buy something else. Okay, next. Next is a case of current formulation. I don't have the vintage. I would love to get the vintage and do a comparison for you guys because I hear good things about this fragrance. And when I smelled this, I hated it. Absolutely despised it, and it's just sat on my shelf ever since. This is the modern formulation. So again, if you love the vintage, I will try my hardest to hunt down a bottle. This is Jacamo de Jacamo. And this is an old fragrance as well. I love my old fragrances. This came out in 1980, which is one of the best years in perfumery. But this version, whoever makes this, which I don't know who it is, to be honest with you. I don't know who owns the house of Jacamo, who owns the house of Jacamo, I should say. This feels like they took a lighter and just melted this bottle. You see how this bottle looks? It feels like they just melted it and stuck it in this bottle. I mean, that's literally what this fragrance smells like when you apply it. And it stays like that for the first hour and a half. It starts to kind of get a little bit better if you can stand the first hour or two, but I don't think you should have to suffer, through serious, I mean, not like some ouds that are a little stinky, but you can, appreciate the beauty. No, this is just complete garbage in this formulation. Now, the vintage with the blue writing, I would love to smell and compare because I hear good things about it. The notes look like they're right up my alley. Clove, oak moss, patchouli, cinnamon, basil, lavender, musk, rosemary, cardamom, Brazilian rosewood, amber, geranium, cedar, cumin, galbanum, cypress, iris, sage, cyclamen, grapefruit, lime. But what comes out is just melted bottle. I mean, literally, that's the only way I can describe it. It's very harsh. There are harsh fragrances that are beasts and that project. Interlude is one, but it smells fantastic. This does not smell good. So I guess if you can hunt down a vintage with the blue writing, it's worth trying. They're not super expensive either. They're 50, 60, 70 bucks. So maybe I'll get it and do a comparison for you guys. But the modern formulation of Jacamo de Jacamo is a big thumbs down for me. Is that gonna give me a thumbnail if I do this long enough from YouTube? Let's see. Okay, next. Next is the exact same scenario. Current formulation of a classic fragrance from 1934, and it's from the house of Dunhill. It's Dunhill for Men. And again, I love my vintage fragrances. I'm one of the biggest vintage heads you can get. But this is supposed to be a woody, spicy, leathery fragrance. If it was something nice like that, they completely ruined it with whatever synthetic molecules. They're now, whoever reformulated this, whatever intern, that was on the staff of Dunhill that they just said, hey, go reformulate this, did not do a good job. I will tell you that right now. This is not worth the $20 that I paid for it. I will probably never wear this again unless I completely run out of other fragrances. That's pretty much all I have to say about that. I would love to hunt down a vintage of this, but it's even harder than Jacamo de Jacamo to find. So I probably won't, but if one falls in my lap, I would love to do a comparison review for you guys. Or if someone has a sample or something they're willing to send me, I will do the review if it shows up on my doorstep. Okay, the last two are pure hates. And one of them's a niche house, and one of them is just... anyways, it's the only fragrance I've ever washed off. Let's start with the niche house first. This is one maybe some people like. I seriously doubt it, though. It's from the house of Histoires de Parfum, and this is called Rare Petroleum. Now, I have a fragrance in the mail, actually, from this house called Rare Fidelis that is made by Julien Rasquinet, the same perfumer who did The Moon, which I am in love with. And I actually have a 2 ml right now that I've smelled, and they are very good. The Rare Fidelis has a note of coffee in it. The Moon does not. And, you know, it takes it in a little different direction, but fantastic fragrance for what it is. This is in that same line, that oud line, that Rare line. And this was a blind buy because I liked Rare Fidelis so much. And I wish I got a full bottle of this or a full bottle of Rare Fidelis and a 15 ml of this instead of the other way around. But the only way I can describe this is, imagine you took the most fecal and animalic aspects of oud and ambergris, right? And you mixed them in with the most disgusting aldehydes you could ever imagine at the top of a fragrance. That's it. There's no other way to describe it. It's this animalic, it's this animalic oud with aldehydes at the top. And as the fragrance goes on, it gets a little bit more powdery. If you can stand the first 2 hours, it gets a little bit better, but it is bad, bad stuff. I regret, thank God I only got a 60 ml bottle. This is another one I probably need to sell because it's an expensive fragrance, but it's not for me. And I love some sneaky oud. I love Sita's oud. I like the Night a lot. I love Bortnikov's ouds. So it's not that I hate oud. I'm not an oud hater. But this is just, and it's this aldehydic, animalic thing. It's bad. Stick with Rare Fidelis from this line if you can. Pass on the rest. Okay, last is the scrubber. The only fragrance I've ever scrubbed off before. Literally, I think the worst fragrance I've ever smelled in my life. It is not an exaggeration. It is as bad as I'm making it seem. It's from the House of 24. It's called Elixer Rise of the Superb. Now, this is a little bit on me because 24 was a house that was hyped up. You know, this is actually the 24 from the 24 TV show from Fox. How's that for cool? But the original EDT they put out was hyped up in the old days when Jeremy Fragrance first got started on YouTube, and he hyped it up and blah, blah, blah. Well, not really understanding fragrances when I first started my journey, you know, and thinking that, well, if it's an EDP versus an EDT, it must be a little bit better because it's heavier and stuff like that. I skipped on the one that was being hyped, and I went for the Elixir, which is supposed to be the eau de parfum, or the stronger version. The notes show fresh, spicy, aromatic, herbal, warm, spicy, amber. There's nothing fresh, spicy. There's nothing warm, spicy about this. There's nothing herbal about this. This is like, imagine the most disgusting Jubilation 25 you could think of. And imagine it was made with the absolute cheapest ingredients you could think of, put into this extremely tacky bottle, you know, with plastic over the top, with gold plastic over the top, and literally a Fox sticker. Copyright Fox right there. That's who you want to make your fragrances, right? Fox TV station. And put it in this awful bottle, and you get a scrubber. I literally scrubbed this off with every ounce of my being, and I instantly applied about 20 sprays of Jubilation 25 to cover this up, and it was the only scrubber I've ever had. This is a bottle that if I smashed bottles or blowtorched them like Eugene, this is one that I would blowtorch. I wouldn't even bother selling it because no other human should experience this fragrance. I'm not even being harsh enough on this fragrance, to be honest with you. So that is a list of fragrances that I hate. I hope you've enjoyed this. It'll probably be a pretty popular video. That being said, I'm going to do more of these. This is not a top 10, and I'm going to do some notes. I've had a request to do Olibanum / incense, frankincense, which I will. I'm going to do leather, which is my favorite note in perfumery, is a leather accord. And so I'm going to do some, this is not a top 10, pick some from my collection and kind of talk about it. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this outside of the box thinking. If you have any recommendations for my new series, this is not a top 10, let me know. And then once we're kind of done with some of this individual accord talk, we will maybe try to move on to some individual reviews and see how that goes. So thanks again for watching. 31 minutes, short for me. We'll catch you guys next time. Adios.